Today on the Eat to Live podcast.
Now, those foods that are rescue used for emergencies are the ones that damage the lung the most. That if you start to use a rescue inhaler on a regular basis, it can cause chronic inflammation to the lung. It vasodilates, makes you feel better, but the more you use it, the more you're going to be asthmatic. So the first thing we have to do is get people off those inhalers. They're never going to get well because they're chronically putting irritant into their lung.
How do you get off of the inhalers?
We usually use a steroid inhaler, so they don't need the beta agonist.
Hey, Eat to Live listeners. I am here with my dad, medical doctor, favorite human, a guy I really like.
Just like?
Love, some might say, I'll say.
And I'm here with my daughter, Jenna, and welcome to the Eat to Live podcast.
Is there any accolades you want to give me before we get started? I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I'll ask you at the end.
Okay, we'll go over that in private.
Thanks, Dad. Okay, so the topic for today is a topic I feel like we talked about a lot growing up. You actually had a lot of patients suffer from this, and it is asthma and allergies.
Yes. I've even had, when you were a little kid, I even had patients with asthma and allergies in the basement of our house that I was watching, sleeping there.
Yeah.
To get them well. And it's been really cool to have people who've suffered for asthma waking up in the middle of the night to take inhalers, who can't walk or take exercise class, to be able to be totally cured from asthma.
Wow.
And that was big for a lot of people because people say, I can't do aerobics, I can't exercise, I can't wake up in the middle of the night to do it. They're literally addicted to inhaler, and asthma runs their life. And the type of quality of life is so low with people with severe allergies and asthma that to be able to give people the hope and the realization they can make a complete recovery is important. So I'm excited to talk about this today.
Definitely. And you're kind of taking me back to my childhood because I remember these patients and how it had a really big impact. And I even had, people I cheered with and did sports with, I've witnessed asthma attacks and it looks just horrible. And the fact that you actually are saying that you can cure it is kind of amazing.
Yes, and it's a bit complicated, but I think we could go over it a lot, how it works. But Let's just talk in generalities first, just to talk about how prevalent it is,
Yeah. So how prevalent is asthma? And what I didn't realize is we're kind of piggybacking this episode with allergies. So is allergies related and under the same mechanisms as asthma? Can you tell us about both?
Allergies are kind of like a mild form of asthma, but you have eczema, you have nasal rhinitis allergies, you have food allergies with digestion, you have all different types of allergies, but they're all interrelated, and but it affects a huge percent of the population. Asthma and severe allergies affects about 15% of the population. It could affect up to children. I think it affects a third of the population has at least some allergies, and then children have about 15% are asthmatics.
Oh, wow.
It's a lot of it's a lot of people can be suffering with this. And what I'm saying here, like other diseases, the medical profession can make things even worse with drugs. And they can turn a mild asthmatic or a person with mild allergies and start medicating them, and then they have severe allergies and more chronic conditions from the use of the drugs they give to treat them. Can make things worse. Like antibiotics when you give antibiotics for viral infections, when children are young with their first cold or their first ear infection, you start to give them antibiotics, and it makes their future ear infections and sinus infections more serious. Likewise, when you start using beta agonists, those rescue inhalers, over time it makes the lungs more irritable and it makes the lungs more hyper-responsive, and you develop more chronic allergies from the use of these medications they give them. And of course, there's non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, aspirin and Motrin and Aleve, and these things also can worsen asthma and create asthmatic in the use of medications, which people are not aware of. There's so many things people are not aware of that we can talk about today.
Yeah, I really wanted to start with the amount of misinformation going around about this topic too, because I feel like the world and society and maybe medicine has brainwashed us to think that allergies is normal, you're unlucky, asthma, it's just luck of the draw, and that don't worry, we'll fix it, we'll get you on the right medications.
Drugs will take care of it all.
Which we're hearing now from you, the exact opposite. But it's also we want to tell people on a positive note, you do have the power to do something and you can improve these symptoms with the right education.
Exactly. And so we can talk about that asthma is increasing. More people have problems breathing. And of course, there's more pollution, there's global warming, there's obviously smoke, there's mold, there's all types of things that can trigger asthma. But the responsiveness to the lung to a mild degree of irritant is, of course, worsened by your own immune system, your diet, the microbiome in your gut. All these things affect your hyper responsiveness to irritants in the external world. And what we're saying here is that even people with hay fever, even people who are sensitive to pollen, even people with cat allergies, over my career, I've had many people get well so they can be exposed to cats. They can be exposed to pollen. They lost their hay fever. In other words, being a nutritarian has enabled people to make complete recovery from these environmental allergens, and particularly to asthma, and lose the hyperresponsiveness. And people they could feel well until they get a cold, and then they get a cold, and they can have asthma with the cold that could last them for a month now. And all that is related to their immune function and their overall, and mostly related to their diet,
So give us some doctor talk. I want some education here on why do these things start in the first place? Is it an autoimmune response that isn't functioning properly? Like, why is someone experiencing asthma or an allergy?
Well, you have a body that's prone to inflammation, and we talk about that cells require a certain amount of antioxidants, these phytonutrients found in colorful plants. And it's the ratio of the concentration of phytonutrients in the plant and the amount of toxicity built up in the cell. So the same, you could say, conditions that eventually lead to ill health down the road in your life, the same causes can create asthma in a child. So we know that, for example, dairy products and eggs and sweets and fried foods are probably the major drivers of this immune system dysfunction in childhood, and lack of vegetables in the diet. And we have studies that show that as people change their diet, asthma clears. So it's not just my word and my work over the last 4 decades. It's also, we have studies to document that this method of getting well is effective and it works.
Is there any food or food group that is particularly harmful for asthma?
Well, don't forget, each person's different, so it's not the same. So we know that fried foods and heated oils hurts everybody and damages the lungs, and even inhaling the smoke from cooking oils can damage the lungs too and create a poor tendency to asthma. So even if you worked in a fast food restaurant or a movie theater and you inhaled the smoke off the fryers or off the popcorn machines, that could be damaging to your lungs. So like secondhand smoke does. So
there's a trend going on the internet right now. You're not that active on TikTok, so I don't know if you've seen it, but it's about how people are realizing the sperm and like what a guy eats before partners even get pregnant impacts the future child and the future child's health.
Right.
Is that true? And can you speak on that for a second?
Yeah, well, it's both the sperm and the egg. And the egg is more prone to damage because it lives in the woman's whole life. And cumulatively, it takes the onslaught of toxins she's exposed to, plastics, toxins, chemicals. The egg can be damaged before the child's born. Especially processed meats can lead to increased risk of having birth defects or childhood cancer when the mother's eating hot dogs and bacon and pastrami and things. Well, not even when she's pregnant, even before the pregnancy, right? Mm-hmm. And likewise, the sperm, which is produced, new sperm is produced ongoing. That sperm is, of course, sensitive to being damaged as well by a poor diet. Not as much to the exposure of the whole life as the woman's egg, but still it's damaged when the sperm is being produced.
But you see how guys are just having their minds blown that what they do in their life actually impacts the health or even getting pregnant, fertility. I just think it's so funny, but I think it's great that that conversation is becoming mainstream.
And we're saying here that the early life, not that your health is affected by your parents' diet before you're even born. And then you have the onslaught of the American way of life, and that children are immediately parents think, they want their children to eat more food and get bigger and grow, and they feed them foods to promote growth. And those foods that are encouraged by society, giving a lot of cheese and dairy and drink their milk and, eat their meat, but it's mostly eggs and dairy that have more allergic potential. And then, of course, we know that in an American diet, you have the primary source of fat or animal fats and oils, which are both immune suppressive and promote asthma. So the combination between those animal proteins and the low level of plant-based vegetables. And all they do in a lot of these studies is they give like 3 to 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. Or one study gave 5 servings of raw vegetables a day, and that showed the most power to cause, and then it acts like 90% of people reversed their asthma once they were getting 5 servings of raw vegetables a day.
Wow.
I use that acronym G-BOMBS, and if you eat your G-BOMBs every day and you avoid the triggers, then people generally get well. But there's a time frame to getting well because the medications they're on keeps them chronically sick. So it's not enough to change their diet. We have to first get them off their beta agonists. So the rescue inhalers, like Ventolin and albuterol, are fast-acting beta agonists. They're called rescue inhalers because you can't breathe, and you take a puff, and it makes you feel better right away.
Yeah.
Now, those foods that are rescue used for emergencies are the ones that damage the lung the most. That if you start to use a rescue inhaler on a regular basis, it can cause chronic inflammation to the lung. It vasodilates, it makes you feel better, but the more you use it, the more you're going to be asthmatic. So the first thing we have to do is get people off those inhalers. They're never going to get well because they're chronically putting an irritant into their lung.
How do you get off of the inhalers?
We usually use a steroid inhaler, so they don't need the beta agonist. But a lot of the new steroid inhalers, they mix a long-acting beta agonist with a steroid. So people are taking a beta agonist all the time. So we have to give them a new prescription to have them take the steroid without the long-acting beta agonist. Now, when they're eating healthy, a lot of these studies show 14 days of eating healthy, they're already doing better and have less inflammation.
Wow.
But I get them eating healthy for about a month of really good healthy food and measuring the nutrients climbing in their tissues, then getting them off the beta agonist so they can just be on the steroid alone. And if I have to, I'll increase the dose of the steroid to control them to make sure I don't need a beta agonist. I may even use a higher strength puff or a frequent use of the puff if we need to. But the expectation is we're going to cut back the steroids as the body's concentration of nutrients increases and as we fix the omega-3 index. We're saying all these oils and animal fats inflame asthma because body fat and the fat on the surface of cells, when they have a low omega-3 index, your percentage of the anti-inflammatory fats are low. So while they're eating right, we're also giving them zinc and the omega-3 fatty acids. We have the vegan type, right? The healthy, but it's not rancid. We give them so we're cutting back on the omega or the pro-inflammatory fats and giving them more anti-inflammatory fats. And this takes time. And then we're slowly able to wean off the steroids. Now, even though I said that the steroids are not as asthma promoting as the beta agonists are, the long-term use of steroids can keep the lung so the body can't detoxify. It can't throw toxins out through the lung. In other words, asthma is toxins coming through the lung tissue. Headaches are toxins coming out of the brain, and nasal runny nose is your body's producing mucus to wash away virus particles and irritants. And the lungs can get inflamed because the body's trying to push noxious waste through the lungs for elimination. So the symptom of the asthma symptom is a right-directed symptom where the body's trying to protect the integrity of the cell. And the asthma attack where you can't breathe is because there's too much inflammation trying to remove toxins from the cell. The word inflammation, to be read in a medical textbook, says the inflammatory response is intertwined with the process of repair. It all serves to wall off, dilute, and remove the injurious agent and set into motion a series of events that tries to heal and reconstitute damaged tissue and purify tissues. So we're saying the asthma attack itself, which can kill a person, the cells don't know the person can't breathe and it's just trying to push out waste. You know what I mean? So the steroids prevents the cells from cleaning themselves. So when you're on steroids, you're retaining more waste in your body. So now that's
why you're saying it's absolutely detrimental.
So you instead of allowing the person to get healthy, we've made the person to get more toxic. It's like doctors treating headaches. They suppress the headache with Escit, Wygain, Vancomycin, Excedrin, Fuhrman, Furoset, Midrin. They give drugs to suppress detoxification, and you turn an occasional headache into a chronic headache syndrome. Now we have an occasional asthma attack, lung reaction, and now a person has severe chronic asthma because we've suppressed these with drugs. So now we're trying to reverse it going the other direction.
I know you said this, but it's a lot to take in. So I just want to be clear. You're saying these medications actually make people worse by that mechanism you described, that's absolutely what it seemed like.
It takes a mild asthmatic and it turns them into a more chronic, severe asthmatic. It takes in a person who gets an occasional wheeze with a cold, and then you go to a doctor to get some medications to take care of that wheeze, and all of a sudden you're wheezing all the time now because you're on medications. So the doctor can be the facilitator to take a mild disease and turn it into a more severe disease with medications, like they do with diabetes. They give a person with mild diabetes, they give them drugs to make the beta cells in the pancreas work harder, and now the person poops out the pancreas faster and they become more severely diabetic from the drugs.
So you're just getting dependent on drugs.
Dependency on drugs instead of removing the cause, yeah. But so now the steroids, which you inhale to suppress the asthma, can suppress adrenal function long term. And now even in a lot of people who I've cured of their asthma and can breathe great, never have asthma attacks anymore, some of these people have been chronically fatigued for 3 months, 6 months, 12 months after they're free of asthma and off their drugs, because now they don't need steroids anymore. And now the body isn't producing enough of its own steroids, and they have adrenal insufficiencies as a result of chronic steroid use. So now I have this one guy who actually came to the retreat last year who got rid of his asthma. It took us about, 4 to 5 months to slowly wean him off medications and to have him eat right. And he really had terrible asthma, couldn't go to work anymore. Got rid of his asthma completely.
Wow.
Except now, the first month he was at the retreat, he was so wiped out he could hardly exercise. And he's a young, strong, guy. Yeah. And then, of course, now it took him, it's really surprising. He now can do exercise and be in good shape, but it took him so long to get his energy back from being on steroids for so long.
So what do you do for that? You just wait it out and let your body heal and repair? Take it easy?
The most important thing you do is let people know there's nothing wrong with them. There's nothing to be concerned about. This is perfectly normal that you're more fatigued than usual.
The healing
takes place.
Process.
You're off the steroids, your adrenal glands will come back. But it doesn't affect most people.
Right.
But it depends on what dose of steroids they've been using and how long they've been using them and whether they used oral steroids as well. But what I'm saying right now is even just the inhaled steroids can cause long-term adrenal insufficiencies, which interferes with their health. So yes, we get people off their medications slowly. And even if they're coming off medications after like a wean of 3 months off the medications, I got them really healthy, their nutrient levels are higher. And now if they start to get a little bit of a wheeze because there's some residual toxins in their lung that have to come out, then I might put them on a few days of some fasting to help speed up the lung detox, and it relaxes the tissues so you don't have to go back on medications for the asthma. But I've been very successful over the last 35 years of doing this in safely having people to get free of asthma and get off the medications and not have attacks anymore. And not have to require medications anymore, which has been really exciting.
Yeah. In kids and adults, it sounds like.
In kids and adults. I even had one person who had very bad seasonal hay fever, when the pollen came out.
What is hay fever? I'm not that familiar. Oh, at the allergies.
It's like allergies and your eyes tear and you breathe.
That's the common allergy that I think of.
Yeah. And so we're saying that a lot of people get well from that when they eat this way. But I've seen it in some cases where they actually take the second year of allergies. Like the first year they were on the diet, they followed the diet for 9 months, pollen came back, they still had their allergies. The second year came around and the allergies are gone. So a lot of times it takes a long time to get well. And some cases of asthma get well in a month, but some people take, 5, 6, 7, 8 months to get well. But they get well. They get well when they do it.
Yeah, and it's important to recognize you're not treating them with a temporary solution. You're treating them lifetime. So it's not like you can just cure your asthma and then go back to eating that unhealthy food.
Yeah, the biggest obstacle, of course, is getting people to eat healthily. And because parents say, well, how do I get my kid to eat healthily? I say, remove all the junk in the house and make your house a safe zone of healthy food. I had one woman, actually the kid had allergies and asthma and eczema too, really bad skin. And she took him in to see me, and she said, my child will only eat chocolate chip cookies and pretzels, So I said,
Did you faint?
We had to shipwreck him. I said, shipwreck him on a desert island where there's only healthy food and he won't starve to death. So she came back to see me 3 days later, yelling at me that he's going to starve to death. This is, of course, she keeps giving him stuff. He's going to starve to death. He's not eating anything. He won't eat.
At home, you're saying make a desert island. Make it only with healthy foods.
Yeah, I said put out pineapple, sweet potato,
For a second,
vegetables.
I thought you were going to say, no, move him to Costa Rica on an island and shipwreck him.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Okay, but at home, got it.
Yeah. So it's funny because they were convinced that they're going to starve to death. I said, an animal's not going to starve to death. If you feed a kid these foods, of course, a child is going to eat what's ever the most calorically dense and hyper palatable. The more sugar, the more salt, the more flavoring. Take any animal, take a rat, take a rabbit, take a canary, and put them in a cage and feed them the most stuff that's French fries and cheese doodles
or a dog,
Take and give them the most hyper palatable, heavily seasoned food, and they'll stop eating their usual non-seasoned if they have lower seasoning.
That's a really good point.
So now a kid won't eat vegetables anymore.
Right.
So now they bring in the kid, and my kid has asthma. I can't get him to eat vegetables.
Okay, so what happened with this mom and her son?
He eventually, so in about 5 days, he started eating food, normal food again.
Yeah, you always talk about how when their kid doesn't really have these opinions, I want the cookies, I want the ice cream, feed them the whole nutrient-dense foods. Don't just, take your kid out to get ice cream and cake and funfetti. And
you have to remove that stuff completely from the environment, because the minute the child has some of that, they're not going to want to eat anything else except that.
And the world contains a lot of that. So it's like, while you can control it in your very safe island, feed them the healthiest foods on the planet, because it's helping their brain health, their whole body health.
The first 3 or 4 years of life, when you have your child at home before he's exposed to the outside world, that's so critical to establish the right environment, because we know modern life leads to asthma. It's modern foods that lead to asthma. Taking your kid to doctors for antibiotics for a little runny nose or increased risk of asthma, and also the extra clean environment. In other words, having your kid play in mud and play with animals, and of course nurse. But of course, we're having, in other words, getting out there in the dirt, being outside, getting your body dirty.
Sure, you love that.
So the idea of keeping animals and keeping, we used to think differently.
Clean freaks, like
be a clean freak.
Sanitize.
Keep nuts and keep things allergies away from your kid. Keep the kids away from pets. No, that increases risk of autoimmune disease, and that increases risk of allergies and increases risk of asthma. You want to be exposed to a wide diversity of bacteria and fungi and mold. You want to have the kid exposed to everything, of course, preferably while the child is still nursing. So the combination of prolonged nursing with a wide diversity of exposure to healthy food and natural dirt even makes it so you have less chance of having an allergy or asthma.
Wow. So when we're talking about allergies, I just wanted to be clear. I was talking more so about those seasonal allergies, but what about if someone's allergic to peanuts, like very deathly allergic? Is that truly just genetic?
No.
Really?
It's not genetic.
Really? You're saying it's like a similar mechanism?
Yes, allergies, even food allergies, has skyrocketed in the last 20, 30 years. Now, everybody's allergic. People that used to be allergic years ago. It's all having to do with the foods that were the quality of the food, the type of foods we're feeding children, and the fact that child should be prolonged breastfeeding is protective, and of course the right diet from the mother and the right diet in the child, prolonged breastfeeding, exposure to a wide variety of foods. So we used to think that don't expose a child to nuts in the first 2 years of life. And now we know that actually exposing your child to nuts and peanuts earlier in life while they're still getting breast milk, and the mother is exposed to the same foods you're feeding the child. So the mother's eating peanuts, the mother's eating these foods that are so-called allergic, and the child's getting the protective antibodies to these foods from the breast milk. So it's natural for a child to be breastfed for about 2 years of life. They're exclusively breastfed for 6 months, but they occasionally have a sip, at night or once a day, twice a day, because the human immune system doesn't fully develop till 2 years. So we're still so the child's getting benefit from the mother's milk up to 2 years of age. Mm-hmm. And the gut, which is porous, it's more leaky when you're a child because it's leaky on purpose to allow your immune system hasn't developed yet. So you're taking in the immunoglobulins from mother's breast milk, from the mother's making the immune system.
Wow.
And as the baby's immune system develops over 2 years, then you don't need the mother's antibodies and antigens and antibodies anymore because your gut closes up as your immune system develops. So the rate of immune system development is proportional to the closing of the digestive tract and the lack of need of breast milk, of the mother's immunoglobulins in the breast milk.
Wow.
So when you're exposed to new food antigens and the mother's exposed to those foods, you're getting the protective antigens from your mother when you're eating the food because she's eating the same food. That's how you really protect the kid against asthma, against allergies, not by pushing the food away, but by letting him eat the food when he's young and have the mother eat the food too, because young enough, so the breast milk, he's still getting the breast milk. from the mothers exposed to the same foods.
Whoa.
So this is a new concept, but it's the most effective way to have a healthy child.
Right.
Even though people don't like to eat healthy, they don't like to feed their kid healthy, they don't like to nurse their kids long enough. They want to, but they pay a price for all that.
Right. And I think it's important to recognize, what you feed it, medications, you want to learn all about that. But beyond that, I had a good question, I swear. It lost me.
It's confusing because you follow your doctors and you follow what everybody else is doing.
Yeah.
And you keep bringing your kids to the pediatrician and he gives you more drugs and he puts you on more antibiotics and people get sicker and sicker and sicker.
Yeah. Okay. What I was going to say is you have these things like you talked about medications, you talked about what we eat in early life. What about environment though? Because you did mention that has a huge impact. So you said it's good to hang on the environment and get dirty and all that, but there's the world's just a lot more toxic than it used to be. Is that contributing as well?
Yes, and that's true. And climate change, pollution, global warming, all has increased the risk of asthma and allergies. Even the World Health Organization. Well, actually, let's talk about this. 8 million people are killed a year. 8 million from pollution.
Oh, really?
Yeah. From just pollution alone.
Yeah.
That's more than, and the World Health Organization says if we continue to have global warming over the next 10 years to like 2030, that's only 5 years away, there'll be 40 million people will be killed from more pollutants in the air due to climate change and global warming.
Really?
So this is that even the 8 million deaths, there's more people killed by pollution than there is by, and of course a major cause of asthma, than there is from all the wars combined, all the alcohol and drug use and abuse, and all terrorism, that all these things, that more people are killed from pollution than any of these things are.
Right.
And yes, so we have an increasing plastic exposure and increasing pollution in the air, the water, and the soil. It all forms this
triad, like there's multiple factors.
Multiple factors of toxicity. And then we're eating unhealthy food. We're not taking it. So we really, getting back to nature is the answer, avoiding things in plastic, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the major source of plastic exposure is seafood. So that's recent in human history. Never occurred before in human history. Now that the waterways have the cumulative effect of all the dumping of garbage in the oceans over the last 100 years has resulted in even the smaller fish now have plastic in them, and people have more plastic in their body.
Right. You used to advise. You said a little bit of fish is beneficial. Now you totally cut that out, and more than that, you advise people. You really caution them against shellfish, right?
Yes, I'm really concerned about, and I used to think about shellfish and bivalves being linked to toxins causing dementia and Parkinson's disease. But I used to think, a little oyster or little sardines or these smaller fish don't have the heavy metals of like barracuda and shark and tuna.
Right.
So we have a little bit of sardines. Add the omega-3 to your diet, a little extra protein is good for you. But now I've completely revamped those ideas that I had decades ago because when you eat a sardine with a full digestive tract, the little fish, the digestive tract is full of plastic, microplastic particles.
Mm-hmm. It's just everywhere.
Right. So we're looking towards potential higher morbidity and mortality in the population that doesn't get back to nature and respect the integrity of the human body and protect our planet and eat healthfully and stay away from everything's, we've been brainwashed to think doctors are the answer and taking drugs are the solution, and we're just totally went off the rails in the wrong direction.
And that technology or advancements will save us. But I think it's also important for anyone that kind of thinks what's the point? Everything's bad for you. You hear that. Well, everything's going to kill you. Everything's bad for you.
Right.
And I think just on a positive note, it's you learn and do what you can. We're still here. We're still on the planet. So we do what we can to make the best food choices we can, to deal with the cards we're dealt, and to try to get on a good track for the planet and for each other. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really great you said that because, yes, the thing is, that's why you can't just moderately eat some more vegetables. When you switch to a nutritarian diet and you actually take in mushrooms and onions and berries and seeds, when you do the whole thing, and a lot of greens, both raw and cooked, then you build strength in the body's ability to resist toxins from the external world. There's both internally produced toxins and there's our external exposure toxins. And the only way we can deal with that degree of toxicity in today's climate in today's world is to eat a diet that's so nutrient dense so our body's cells can protect ourselves. We're also trying to avoid smoke. We're also trying to not inhale toxic,
not drink alcohol, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Drinking alcohol, smoking cigarettes, taking drugs.
Right.
All these things are, but but smoking cigarettes and drinking alcohol is not as kill as many people as pollutions. So we're doing everything right to protect the body, to protect ourselves, because we have to do this in today's world. We have to be on top of this, that other people aren't that interested, they don't understand the concepts, and that our own personal integrity, when we eat to protect ourselves, to reverse asthma. Let's think about this for a minute. When you eat a diet to fix your omega-3 index, to expose yourself to phytonutrients, to eat the right foods, and you decrease animal product production, to decrease animal product consumption, right? You're also protecting the planet, because a vegan is saving more than 200 animals a year. You have to kill more than 200 animals a year to feed a non-vegan, right? And feeding plants to the animals to then going to feed them to the food is an inefficient source of calories. So it leads to global hunger and inability of the world to support enough food production to feed a growing population on the world. So you're causing people to die of starvation and hunger. So when you eat a diet of more fruits and vegetables, as your diet becomes more plant-based, you're saving. It's the major thing you can personally do to stop climate change, global warming, because planting trees and planting vegetables is the key back in things, and not producing all the methane and taking down the forest to grow, taking down the rainforest to grow animal feed and having animals. In other words, the point is that your diet is a huge contributor to both global warming, pollution, and black soot. The black soot that comes off burning down the rainforests to produce palm oil and animal feeds, right? And then we can't feed the food to humans. We have to feed it to animals. So we're destroying our climate, we're polluting the world, we're causing climate change, and we're also destroying our own personal health in the process. And if everybody got healthier, it would protect everybody else. We'll be protecting other people by making the world be safer and less polluted too.
Right. So your diet also has the power to slow climate change, help the environment and your personal health, and maybe save your family from tragedy, because everyone wants to have healthy, happy family members and deserves that, loved ones and all that stuff. So I think it's really important. Hey, for people who want to know more about allergies or asthma, you have that whole health concern section on your website where they can read about actually exactly what you recommend to do to take care of that.
Yeah, it's a slow wean off the medication. And if people need help, they could always join the membership at drfuhrman.com at the level where they can communicate with me directly through the forums and ask me questions, and I can give them guidance, at a relatively low fee to join, and they can help direct them and their doctors how to slowly change medications over time. We're not just taking medications away where a person can't breathe.
Yeah,
we're improving their health, slowly withdrawing it, so the person is always comfortable and can make a complete recovery.
Right, which is so cool. I love a complete recovery. So
complete recovery is possible, and this is an important thing that people know that it's possible. They don't just think that drugs are the answer to everything.
Yeah. Well, I personally learned a ton. I'm actually impressed that you were able to give me such good textbook definitions. That was really, really good. And you definitely taught me more than I realized.
I forgot one thing.
Yeah.
If we have time.
Yeah, we do.
It's Buteyko breathing techniques.
Okay.
That we want to train the asthmatic to do. It's type of breath holding. It's type of like, when you swim, you're not going to take a breath as much as you want. You're like not breathing, then you're breathing. You're not breathing, then you're breathing. But in any case, if I'm talking to you right now, I'm not going to breathe when I feel like breathing. I'm going to wait till I'm suffering a little bit. And then I'm suffering just a little bit now because I didn't take the breath. Now I'm going to take a little bit of a breath. Now I didn't take a full breath. I took enough breaths so I'm not really uncomfortable, but I didn't really take a full breath because I'm still getting a little uncomfortable again. The point I'm making is we're training the lung to get, we use lung training exercise, including Buteyko lung training technique, to also add to the ability of the asthmatic to get well.
Can you say that again slower? What's the technique?
It's called Buteyko.
Buteyko.
Breathing exercises.
Buteyko breathing exercises. Okay.
We add that to the nutritional plan, to the supplements, to the change in medications. We change the medications, we adjust everything, we use the right sin. So part of our process of getting well includes breathing exercises as well.
Wow. So these are exercises like it's kind of like our healthy living plan. You'll also have exercises that really help your lungs as well.
Correct.
Wow. Super cool.
Yeah.
All right. That was awesome. I think we gave people good stuff. If you suffer from asthma or allergies, there is hope and ways to get 100% better, which is so cool, or at least reduce symptoms dramatically. So,
right. And recommend this podcast to people you know that have allergies and asthma.
Absolutely. I think it's incredible. Good work, doctor. See you guys next time.